Are we live? That's what you have to say every time you start a live stream.
Oh, and he's heard the
Yeah,
notifications,
we're
so I
good.
guess we're live.
I want to do this, like one of those, like, welcome. We should
Welcome
all
to the
turn
shop.
around, man. Let's start over. All right, on three. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, I didn't see you there.
Hey guys.
Welcome to our live stream.
Friday afternoon in the shop. We've been selling some beer and making some recipes, and now we're going to tune in with you guys to give you the wrap up or the rundown or the whatever
Yes.
of what we've been doing this
Yes.
week. Maybe on here I should be able to pull it up.
Yes.
So I can follow along with any questions. We're still mostly. This is also a test of figuring out our live stream thing. Are we on that one? Switch to this one. Let's get this one centered in real good too.
Swap to subject view.
Yeah. Tell me where it looks good.
The back of my head looks weird.
Nah, dude. Nah, dude. We got a fresh cut.
Maybe we should have done this before we went live.
Now we got it.
This is fun though. I think people enjoy this.
This is like taking the, like, no veil. There's no veil between the creator and...
Remove the mystique.
But yeah, exactly.
Download OBS.
The fourth
Yeah.
wall. The fourth.
How do we want
wall
to
is
talk? How
broken.
did we live stream? A bunch of people have actually been asking. So basically, what we're going to try to do here is just share a Friday afternoon in the shop with you. It's been an okay week, so maybe we're not going to get slammed. We might get slammed. If we do, we'll just kind of try to incorporate it.
We'll ignore you
and
completely.
go for as long as we can, and you guys can just be here with us. But otherwise, we've gotten a ton of questions this week. We try to always keep track of the most like consistently asked or frequently asked questions, if you will. So we'll kind of run through a few of the big ones that we've gotten this week and give you some answers, give you some info, give you some insight. If you have questions and if you're watching live,
False confidence.
yeah, false confidence in what you're doing, which is basically how we like
Yes.
get through our day-to-day lives. Ask them
Alcohol
here,
helps with that.
and that's a big part of what beer is all about. Here we go. So I am now. Oh, I'm watching us. But I'm like 20 seconds behind. But I think the live stream questions should be live. I don't know. We don't really know how this shit works. But if you have questions, ask them.
They changed it. You could have used that as a excuse. They changed it like last week.
Really?
Yeah. Did you see they moved the go live button?
Yeah,
It's
I
big
did see
now.
that.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
They also added analytics stuff.
Well, we can have the chat over here.
Yeah, can you see the chat on there? I had it popped out. There we go.
Pop that shit.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so if you guys have questions, ask them, and we'll keep glancing it there, and we'll answer your questions live. First order of business, 2 new beers hitting the market from one of our brothers from another mother breweries out there.
I swear to God we don't dick ride ATG. But it feels
That
like
hard. We dick ride everybody.
Yeah, that's true.
We're
We dick ride people who are nice to
We
us.
will not be slut shamed. We'll fuck anybody who's willing to fuck.
Yeah,
with that.
that's true. That's true.
So you've got Retitled,
Mhm.
which is a great new Pilsner out. You want to give it a glamour shot to the camera there? I've had that one from
Damn, they're
a,
putting Dauntless on here too.
Yeah,
That's
I like
dope.
it. That is pretty legit. From like
Could you even see that?
a flat growler
I checked it. It looked good. Yeah.
that Cameron brought over, but I've
Yeah.
never had it fresh.
Cameron sucks.
I love it.
I do too. I'm just
Good job snatching up Cameron against the grain.
Yeah,
that was a
I
good
agree.
hire
I
right
agree.
there. That's a really good hire.
That guy sucks.
No, he's
I'm just
great,
kidding.
man. Sincere, intelligent,
Yeah.
knowledgeable,
Andy sucks.
family man, businessman,
Yeah.
really good brewer. He's made one of the best gosas I've
Okay,
ever
brewer.
had.
Somewhat. He brews beer. No, I love that beer.
That Pilsner's great.
Is that like our new thing? Like, just talk shit about people who are.
Yeah.
Well, the ones we like.
Yeah.
That's how you know.
If we're talking shit.
We're like the girl in the playground who hits you. She really wants
Yeah,
to kiss
she
you.
just wants to crush. She has a
Yeah.
crush on you.
Yeah, that never happened to me.
I get that.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Have you
This
tried
is
the
pretty
Listening
good,
Party
too.
one yet? This is the other new one out. You
I
wanna
have,
try
but I'll try more.
Glamour shot? Can I give you a glamour shot?
Yeah.
This one does not have Dauntless on the back, but it has Guest Room Records.
Awesome record store. Doesn't what's his name from WFPK own that?
I don't know.
Not Kyle Meredith. I think he's the owner of that.
I have no idea, but that's very possible. Looks like just 2 people sitting on a couch. What's better than getting together with friends and listening to your favorite records? Nothing. Listening parties are the perfect blend of music,
Do people like to do
conversation,
that?
and community, I guess.
feel like it's a dying.
I like getting together with my
thing.
friends and raging.
It sounds very nice.
Fucking
Party,
rage!
records playing. I don't know.
Yeah. As long as the records are like Cannibal Corpse,
Yeah.
and we're just sitting around listening to that.
Or gangster rap.
Or gangster rap.
This is really
The
good.
NWA.
Really, really light. Malt finish on it, but it's a pale ale. It's got a really nice hop presence.
Who do we? How
Really
do we know
balanced.
this?
Is that one mine or is
5.5%.
that one?
This is yours. So, nice job. There's another new beer in town.
Yes.
It's not. It's not.
I didn't go there.
That. It's not Jungling, although that's also kind of.
Yingling?
Yeah.
What did you call
Younglings.
Youngling?
Is that what it's called?
Is it Jungling or Youngling?
I thought it was Yingling.
It's called Yinling, but the meme online is like, if you drink a bunch of them,
You
you're
killed
like,
younglings?
I killed younglings.
Oh!
Like Star Wars.
Yeah,
Prequel
like
memes.
Anakin?
Prequel memes.
Gotcha.
21st Amendment. Welcome,
That shit
guys.
Sucked.
This is really good beer, and it's been like they were a trendy beer.
I
For
don't
a
know if I'd say
long
it's a
time.
really good
I'm saying
beer.
back in the day, they
Yeah,
were
yeah.
one of the ones that you're like, ooh, 21st Amendment.
I think Hell or High Water. I'm gonna start saying. I just want to talk about what sucks today for some reason.
All right, yeah, it's one of those days.
Hell or High Watermelon sucks.
I haven't tried that one.
It's so gross. I hate that beer.
It's not bad though.
Yeah, that beer's not bad.
I like
We've
that
been
one.
going through it.
We drank a few of those today.
Yeah.
Remember where my glass was?
What? Which one?
I don't know any of them.
Over here.
That'd be great. That'll work.
This is supposed to be a Q&A, so maybe we should.
Yeah.
Are there any
you know,
cues?
We're just
We don't have any cues.
Well, we have some cues.
written.
These are cues we've had. You know, these are cues that people have, even if they're not asking them right now.
They've asked them before.
They come in. People that come in the store ask these questions a lot. So these are just kind of the
a
ones.
lot of you
Historical.
guys
Yeah,
kind of, whenever
cues.
you like call us or like, oh, sorry
Oh,
to
it looks
bother you,
pretty.
man. Yeah, it's actually really pretty beer. Like, damn, right?
Yeah.
Especially at this glass.
Yeah.
Like,
Questions
the
we
aroma
answer
is nice.
on Facebook. We answer on the phone. We
But
answer
that
in the
tangerine
store.
makes it hazy. I like that
I like it.
because it looks like chill haze.
And these are we were just kind of brainstorming what some of those topics are. So we've kind of got a few things set up here. But absolutely, if you guys have
Oh
questions
wow.
online,
Really fresh.
This is
drop those in the
fake.
comments and we'll answer those as well.
One of the questions that we get asked a lot, and we've had
that
2
is
or
better
3
than I
people
thought it was
ask
gonna be.
this week. How many times a week do you hear this question? Sam actually wrote these all down, so I don't know what they are. I just pitched my yeast. I don't see any bubbles. What's going on?
I mean, just throw your beer on. Right?
Yeah, you're done.
Dump it.
Dump
drain
it.
pour.
Never
Drain
try
pour.
homebrewing ever again.
Yeah, you're done.
You're terrible.
So basically,
Or the actual.
No,
answer
we're
is-
being sarcastic.
when you pitch your yeast, what's going to happen right away? If it's dry yeast, they're sitting there in little granules on the surface. They're going to wake up over the first, 8 to 12 hours. Whenever you need to head to, you're good.
Oh, I'm
to go.
good.
You're not
Just
committed.
checking the time.
As soon as they start going, fermentation is what they call an anaerobic process or reaction. So basically what that means is there can't be any oxygen present in the environment by definition for fermentation to happen. So the first 24 to 36 to sometimes even 48 hours.
What about for those people who may have just forgot what the word anaerobic means?
It means no oxygen.
Okay.
It means like there can't be any oxygen present.
Yeah.
I remember that word from high school biology.
Or if you're like into
I've heard the word before, I just had no idea what it meant.
aerobic or
Okay.
aerobic
Okay.
exercise, if you are familiar with like working
So the
out,
expense of energy.
get your blood pumping, that's like an aerobic
Yeah.
chemical process.
Okay.
Anaerobic is what happens when you start building up like lactase or lactic acid when you're working out so hard that you can't get enough oxygen to your muscles to work. Yeast kind of do the same thing. They'll do aerobic, not fermentation, but they'll do aerobic work, which basically means eating up the oxygen, and that kind of allows them to reproduce. It allows them to store nutrients. It
So
allows
that
them
would
to
be-
store up, like build their cell walls.
When you're taking your wort out of your boil kettle into your fermenter, you really want to oxygenate it.
Yeah.
And that you said so that kind of threw me. So that
It's
means
like giving it's like steroid shot for somebody who's lifting weights. It's just like it's giving them so much fuel to get strong, to reproduce, to get healthy. And then as soon as they eat all that oxygen, then they turn over to their like next most available supply of fuel, of
Yeah.
life-giving sustenance, which is sugar. So fermentation is different than them eating oxygen because then they turn anaerobic. No more oxygen. They start eating that sugar and the byproducts of that instead of like strengthening and like nutrition,
Yeah.
they kind of start poisoning themselves a little bit. They'll start creating alcohol and carbon dioxide. They'll start fermenting. Sugar,
Shitting where they eat.
Shitting where they eat. Yeah, exactly. So it's a good way to say that. Yeah. So they'll start kind of turning alcohol into carbon dioxide. So if it's 24, if it's 48 hours later, and you're not seeing any activity out of your airlock, that's totally normal. You're really not going to see any sign of high fermentation in a normal homebrew like scenario for the first 24 to 48 hours.
And what are some, just and not to go too like micro into this question, but what are some things that would cause the lack of seeing the bubbles?
Yeah,
happy bubbles.
So number one, it's just not fermenting yet. It's still just doing that. We're getting ready to start fermenting. Even once it starts, you won't always see bubbles out of the airlock. We have a couple beers fermenting right here, and like especially in these plastic buckets.
Ooh, what are these?
This is one I'm about to put in a keg. That's one of our questions we kind of like threw into the mix on purpose.
Okay, I'll
How do you keg your beer? Oh, and we actually tried this today. If you guys are fans of our live streams, which we've been doing a lot of lately, this is Sam did a, what'd you call it? Hanging out in the shop with Sam on a snow day?
Yeah, brew day with Sam.
Oh, that's going to be so much alcohol.
We tasted it. It's good. It got really dry.
Can I try it?
Yeah, it got stuck at like 1.05.
We have a sampler sanitized?
I have a keg for the sanitizer. So we threw into. So that's a good Q&A question. We get asked that all the time too. My fermentation is stuck.
What do I do?
What do I do? This cider, which was started out at like 1.0.
I should have put yeast nutrient in there during that live stream. I didn't add any yeast nutrient.
Hey, we got a lot going on.
So yeah,
especially when we're trying to figure out how live stream.
Stop yelling at us.
Stop yelling at us.
Is that our keg for?
That's what this is. Lemon haze, super lemon haze is going into.
Okay.
One thing I would say about these buckets is that they do a good enough job of keeping that positive pressure, but not necessarily all the gases can escape through that airlock. Yeah. So you could have some active fermentation going on and some off-gassing, but it's just kind of leaking out around the lid instead of through that airlock. So that could be sometimes why you don't see bubbling happening.
So if you suspect that that's happening,
could be temperature related too, because you're not going to see a lot of activity with a cold fermentation.
Cold. Yep.
And that brings us to another point about temperature control. And we're going to talk about that for the next hour. Just kidding.
Well, that does kind of lead into the next question, which I had written down, which was, how do I make a lager?
Okay.
A lot of people ask about that.
So we're getting ready to make one of those this weekend, right?
Yeah, we are.
You want to show our recipe that we're going to do?
You got it what now?
Sorry.
Kidding.
And there's going to be a little surprise to go along with this.
In about a week, we're going to try to crank out our 2018 best thing to make for the summer.
Yes, which we think we have. After traveling, research, and just drinking a shit ton of beer, we think we figured it out.
Agua Fresh is the clue. How do you pronounce it?
Agua Fresco.
Agua Fresco.
Yeah.
I just learned about this earlier today.
Yeah.
You said it's like a very low alcohol, like fermented, like watermelon. But back to this question, how do you make a lager? Lagers are really defined by using a lager yeast.
Yes.
So that's something that's been only really come around in the last, what, like 200-300 years probably at this point. My understanding of it. I'm sure somebody...
How long have they been brewing beer in Germany? Because that's pretty much like their shit, right?
Yeah, and I feel like that's maybe where lagers were invented.
They're really, really pretty.
So lagers very much are defined by the yeast. You're using a lager yeast. Pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Dried out for only being like
and
that.
Now you taste the blue.
We warmed it back up to like 68, 69 degrees. Added some yeast energizer.
Okay.
Actually,
I have a
it's dry
question
as
for
hell.
me.
Yeah, sure.
So, like, when you get a stall like that, and it stalls on a beer that already has a pretty high gravity.
Already?
Yeah. We've had that issue. We've had that issue.
Yeah, and we actually get that question a lot, especially.
Sorry about that.
Using basically probably champagne yeast would probably be the short answer. Like like a yeast that can tolerate
high gravity.
Like a really tough.
Would that San Diego Super used to be like the same kind of deal, or is that not?
San Diego could work if you're over 10% already.
Yeah.
Like. That's,
maybe distiller's yeast.
Well, they make
White
Labs actually makes a really good strain, 099, the high gravity yeast. I wouldn't use it to like ferment out an entire beer because it is pretty estery,
Yeah.
like Belgian-y basically. So if you're trying to make something clean, like I wouldn't use it. But if you are trying to like shed those last few points, if most of the stuff is gone, it doesn't care about alcohol. It can ferment out to like 20%.
Whoa.
You might consider doing a little starter with it, like getting it ramped up, letting it be, because once you dump it into your beer, it's going to immediately be in aerobic environment, like we discussed earlier. So maybe give it a little bit of time.
And what was the other word?
Anaerobic or aerobic.
Oh, okay.
Like give it a little bit of time with oxygen, like in a starter, to kind of ramp up and get jazzed and get ready to start eating, build up their cell walls, get healthy, and then dump that little bit of culture into your beer that you're having trouble drying out, basically. And they should just chow down on that little bit of sugar, so there's not going to be a ton of ester production because there's only a very small amount of fermentability left.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I will usually do to dry out a beer. Champagne yeast works really well like that too.
Yeah, we've done that before for sure.
We've definitely done that before. Or if you have a beer that you want to bottle condition, like a barley wine or like a imperial stout that's been sitting for a long time, sometimes you can mix in a little bit of that to help that teeny bit of fermentation that's required for bottle conditioning.
Yeah.
You're trying to add priming sugar and carbonate.
Just do like a sprinkle in each bottle.
Yeah, of champagne yeast is usually enough to produce that teeny bit of
Those big beers.
this 4th carbon in a keg.
Yeah, I really never have great experiences with
It's a lot safer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Two
pros and cons.
Yeah. Oh, there's nothing like the feeling of naturally carbonated beer.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Especially in big, like, barley wines or like those
great.
old school styles.
It's great.
What did you guys finish up on? How do I make a lager?
Well, I
Kind
guess
of.
the other thing would be like the temperature.
Just
Lagers are fermented at lower temperature, so probably around 50 degrees, around that range. So you need to have like a temperature controlled environment, like a something like this kegerator we have over here that we ferment in as a fermentation chamber. That would be kind of the other thing. To
So
wrap
there
up
are
that
some
topic.
equipment demands.
Yeah.
With brewing lagers.
The brewing process will be exactly the same. Hey, how's it going, man?
How you doing?
But
Yeah,
yeah.
Hey, we're just doing a live Q&A, so.
If you have questions, holler. We're live streaming on our YouTube page, so
I'm happy to help you find anything you need as well.
Oh, you're gonna put all the ingredients together for me, so
Gotcha, man.
we can help.
Yeah.
that you can do.
But basically, I would let it go at 55 degrees, like for the first 10 to 14 days, basically until it's really within a hair's breadth of your final gravity, and then rack it over into a secondary, or I will often even just lager like inside of a keg if you're going to be kegging it.
That is my preferred.
Me too. It's just easier.
So
And then, but the only downside to that is like it's lagering, but I need to taste it.
yeah,
So we usually kill a keg of a lagering beer like in a week.
because it's so good.
Yeah, it's so good.
Lagers taste so good fresh.
There's two
All
of them.
like
As good as they taste after they actually lager, especially with like the strains nowadays.
I know how to do this. I
You
swear.
used to kind of need to do what
Yeah.
you'll hear it called like a diacetyl rest.
So
Diacetyl
that's
is kind of like,
two-hearted, and that's
if you're
the-
familiar with how yeast work, you'll hear about esters
Yeah.
and phenols. They're kind of little byproducts of these strains that kind of have those fruity or peppery or grassy flavors.
Whatever you got.
Lager yeast are kind of unique in that they'll produce their own little flavor called diacetyl, which if you ever have a lager that just tastes kind of like, they get described as like buttery or like
Ooh, yeah.
thick or kind of like oily.
like buttery wine, like
Yeah.
that buttery taste of wine.
Exactly. Diacetyl. So traditionally, after you were done fermenting that lager at like 55 degrees, there's a bunch of different schools of thought on the best way to do this, but the way that I've had the best results with is then to bring it up to ale temperature.
Yeah.
So now that they have no more food, no more sugar, those lager yeast are desperate. They'll start reabsorbing a lot of those diacetyl molecules that they produced. Just because, like, you could drink your own urine for so long and like, stay alive. There's still chemical energy inside of those molecules that they can use, and they're not as squeamish as we are about like reabsorbing their own waste products to stay alive. So they'll reabsorb those buttery flavors and basically clean up. Maybe like if you're R.
I
Kelly.
mean, do you, bro?
Yeah, do you, bro? Do you? I'm not into it.
Me either.
And then after that's done, then you get it cold. So lager is a word that basically means like to store in the German. And really what that means is to cold store. They would lager in lagering caves, which just meant shoving the beer into a cold,
And then
cold
whatever
drilled
the
into a
temperature
mountain.
was.
Yeah, so, you know, ideally if you have control, something lower than 55, like upper 40s, low 40s, upper 30s if you even want to get that cold.
They just knew that the beer that they were making was coming out clean.
Yeah.
When they got done.
Yep.
They didn't know why.
Right.
They just knew that, but it was because of the temperature.
Letting it age, having a well-aged lager, just produced a beer that was like,
Yeah.
you know, when you drink an IPA, you might say that, but you get those malty, like that malt flavor finish on it. When you drink, especially like a German or a like Czech or just an old world Pilsner, super clean, super crisp, like on the end of your palate. So that's just all thanks to those lager yeasts that work a little bit colder, a little bit slower, and are just really, really thorough.
Yeah. It's worth the wait.
Yeah, but usually it's hard to wait.
It's hard.
We're gonna do a lager on Sunday. I think we're gonna maybe gonna live stream it too.
Yeah.
So if you want to hang out on Sunday and talk about lager brewing, come.
We're gonna
get with your
do
boys.
a cerveza.
Yeah.
Right?
I think we're gonna make. Yeah, you showed the recipe, right? Brewgrass light lime. So we're gonna make like a lime Mexican lager with some lime peel in it, and then make some cool Radler, Cuvée
Situation.
Yeah. It's gonna get weird.
We'll have kegs of both things so you can try them separately.
I even think
Your
I
idea.
want a couple. Like, yeah, we'll have a keg, have 5 gallons of our Mexican lager,
Yeah.
and then have 5 gallons of like
agua fresca.
Agua fresca, maybe even 10 gallons, maybe a couple different flavors. Remember when we were hanging out at Gordon Biersch? And
Yes,
like he was making us like all those
Nikki
different
was making
flavors.
us, yeah.
That was legitly cool.
That was fun.
Yeah, and they were all really good.
Yeah. That was a good brand of shit though.
Yeah, it was. I looked that up. We might holler at them. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. What are some good spring beer recipes? We do indeed get asked that all the time. Good thinking, Sam. Well, I think we shared this one. This is what we're going to be brewing on Sunday. These are the
That's
3
kind
other
of in
ones.
to be fair, this
For
is in
summer.
preparation for summer.
Yeah, that's a summer beer.
I mean, but this would work.
But as soon as I get a
Who
day,
doesn't want to drink them?
as soon as I get a day where I see the sun, especially this time of year, where I'm like desperate
Yes.
for spring,
Give me them lagers.
Modelo!
Yeah, yes.
I'll start making micheladas.
Modelo Especial.
This one we have made a ton of this week. This is one that we wrote up for a guy who was, I guess he said we'd made it a couple years ago, but he lost the recipes, and he said it was amazing. So we worked with him to try to recreate the beer that he'd made. Hopefully you'll holler back at us, brother, and let us know how it turns out. But that's one that people have kind of seen this when they're stacked and just been attracted to. I don't know if it's just a nice color of ink or if it sounds like a good beer, but this might be one we try soon.
Which one's that one? Tangerine Whip? Oh, cool.
Here's our many iterations. Like you're probably not gonna be able to hear anything while this grain mill is going on, but our New England IPA.
Our cash grab?
Yeah.
That
So,
one's been brewed like 20 times.
We've worked quite a bit on this one, and I think we've gotten it pretty good. All these recipes, if you guys don't want to frantically write down off your screen, we'll have them here in the shop, or we'll put them up on brewgrasshomebrew.com so you can grab them. That's been another big one this week. And then this is one that Sam came up with today. If you guys are Trailer Park Boys fans,
That's so funny.
this is like the beer that
It's a great name.
he came up with, and it's, I guess
Dude,
what do
I
you
like
say,
that
Sam?
recipe.
This is like the Trailer Park Boys.
They brew that in the latest season. That's like one of the plots if you watched it yet.
Wait, that's the.
The official Trailer Park Boys recipe. Freedom 35.
Oh, we got a real question.
Yep.
Julian, don't sue us!
From Isaac Mitchell.
What's up, Isaac? How you doing, brother?
So, what are the most common homebrew mistakes? Do some mistakes give the beer a unique twist? I feel like that question has some gunpowder behind it.
Me too. The number one mistake that I think people make when they're just getting started,
Not cleaning enough.
I actually think it's the opposite. I
Really?
think it's not zenning out enough. I
Okay.
think it's like if you're
Too
raising a
obsessive.
kid.
Yeah.
Like being a helicopter parent.
I get it.
Being like a helicopter parent to your beer. And you and I both have done that a ton. Like even with our big stout that we have going, we want to like open it up and smell it. We want to take a gravity reading on it. We want to like see how happy it is. We want to see what it's doing. Kind of like the original question, like, oh, I don't know if my beer's working. It's probably working. As long as you kind of have your brewing process in hand, like the worst thing you can do to any beer is like
Yeah.
open it up and check on it every day. Primarily because every time you open that bucket to like see what a beer's doing, not only are you potentially like, is my beer infected? I don't know, let me open it up and look. But then you're just basically inviting
Yeah, it's a bacteria
a whole
like
fresh
party
swoosh
call.
of oxygen.
You're like partying here.
Yeah, partying here, which you don't. Like they're
You don't
they're already partying. This
Yeah.
is like a rave.
This is an exclusive party.
Yeah, it's VIP.
Only certain people.
You're not invited.
East people are invited.
Yeah.
Any of those wild
Give it 48 hours.
ruffians, they're not invited. But there are parties where they're invited.
And then especially once fermentation is actually like nearing completion, you're also pulling in fresh oxygen,
Yeah.
which we like, again, going back to that aerobic versus anaerobic conversation, you
Yeah.
want oxygen in there in the beginning. You want to mix in as much oxygen as you can because your yeast want to eat it. But once they've eaten it all, any extra oxygen that goes back into the mix, they're not going to be interested in because they've already basically switched over to eating sugar. That oxygen just stays in your beer and oxidizes it. So if you've ever had a beer that just tastes like that old beer, like you've had oxidized beer, like cardboardy,
Metal,
like,
metallic-y beer.
yeah. Or if you've ever been to like, if you're ever like, Isaac, you probably wouldn't know anything about this, but if you're at like a frat party or like a crazy keg party, kidding, brother. I know you're doing keg stands, probably right now while you're like asking questions. But they're like pumping the keg all night.
Yeah.
The beer
Just
tastes
adding
fine,
oxygen, yeah.
but then you wake up the next day on the couch with like
Your no clothes.
no clothes. You
One
don't know where
sock.
your pants are. And you have,
One
like,
sock,
flip-flop.
and it's not on your foot.
Yeah, and you have a Speedo, but it's on your head.
Yeah.
And then you're like, ugh, and you like drink
Very
the beer out of the
specific that you
keg.
said Speedo.
You know how we're all.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, the beer doesn't taste like it did last night. It tastes like flat
Also, your taste buds are
liquid
back,
cardboard. That's true. Yeah. Anyway, that's oxidation. You've been pumping oxygen into that beer, and it will bond with a lot of the other like reactive molecules, the acidity and the blah 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 that are in your beer, and just make flavors that don't taste great. So don't open it up. Let it do its thing. Let it finish out. Don't be concerned
Relax.
about. Yeah, that's it. That's
Relax.
actually the correct answer.
Don't worry. Have a homebrew or commercial beer, whatever you have, or whiskey, or just water if you're really poor.
Aside from that, since I know that Isaac is already a pretty accomplished brewer, the more
Look
like
at you.
technical answers I think would be sanitation. Just really making sure that if you're going to be anal about one thing,
It's sanitation.
be anal about sanitation.
Yeah.
And then probably the number two, or patience, sanitation, and then temperature control. I
Yeah,
think it's
temperature
probably the next
control.
most important thing to think about.
Yep.
Try not, like the worst place in the world we could ferment a beer would be like right in this window right here, where it's like sunny. Oh, these are our hop vines growing. I think we have a question about that coming up
Hot,
too.
cold, hot, cold, hot, cold.
Our vines. It's fluctuating. In the middle of the night, it's super cold, especially in the middle of the summer when the window's up, like the sun is pouring through there.
Unless it's a Belgian beer, which
Yeah,
that
unless
would
you're
really
trying
be
to stress
great.
out your yeast.
Yeah.
So somewhere more like, if I'm fermenting here,
We're talking clean beers.
we usually ferment inside of this chest freezer right here, which
Yep.
has like a temperature controller on it, so it stays at 68 degrees consistently. Or, if you're not like fancy like that, I put mine right up here, which is really close to the thermostat,
When did you
and
become
kind of in
fancy?
between the wall. Well, if I just need to let them rip and let them do their thing, just try to find a place in your environment that has like the smallest amount of temperature fluctuation.
Closets
between
are
day and
great.
night. Interior closet, a bathroom, your basement, if it's not too cold, is a really good spot to do it. So those are some pretty good, like, general
From
guidelines, I
personal
would say.
experience, I always had the problem when I first started out with doing too much. Like trying to, like when I first started recipe
Yeah,
formulating.
like
Yeah, like too, like.
keep it simple.
You were the
stupid.
same way.
Yeah, yeah.
Like we did this together, just like the craziest beers.
0.12 pounds of honey malt, 0.12 pounds
Right.
of curing unit,
I was-
0.382
Exactly.
pounds of
I was
roasted
way
barley.
too focused on that and not the process and not learning the process.
Yeah, if you
making-
just, I'll
like,
bring everything
way
up.
too
Can you tell me
focused
the phone
on
number?
getting the things that didn't matter right because I didn't know what mattered.
Yeah. I think that's extremely true too, and that's something I try to like reinforce. It doesn't like, especially with like people who get obsessed about recipe formulation, even after they've been doing it for a really long time, and they're only obsessed with like winning medals or like getting something so to style.
Which is cool.
It's totally cool.
That's its own hobby.
Yeah.
You know. But
But
that's not where you're at the first time you brew a beer when you're first getting into it.
I even think later on, like in my experience, one of the least important things is what your recipe looks like.
Yeah.
As long as you're close, making happy yeast is 20 times more important for people getting started than really
Might be
trying
talented,
to,
but you need technique.
Yeah. Also, it's just beer.
Yeah. Also, just beer. Relax. Don't worry. Have beer.
Or a few. Thanks, Isaac.
17.
Cheers, brother. The next question, I think this was a ringer.
How do you keg a beer?
Yeah, I'm gonna keg this one right now.
All right.
I got a
Sounds like
sanitized
good
keg.
Time for me to leave
Yeah, for sure.
because that involves work.
Fair. This is our lemon haze, our super lemon haze.
Oh wait, I'm gonna try it.
Yeah, you want to do a little
try it,
sample?
yeah.
For sure. That's part of the process. I just sanitized this keg, so that's the first step.
This is our.
Just treat your keg like a secondary fermenter.
So this is our lemon haze mixed with our funk sprung recipe to make a.
With that imperial dry hop yeast, which I am.
Yes, with the new imperial yeast to make
Usually non-commission.
a completely new beer or an upgrade of
Funk sprung.
funk sprung,
Which we
slash
can't get those summer hops anymore.
slash lemon haze.
Yeah, it's the baby.
Yeah.
I think we should just call it like Funk Sprung 2.
Okay.
I like super lemon haze though. It's
I'm
really
gonna hang and listen for a
Cool.
while.
Yeah, if you have any questions for us,
Yeah,
or if you want a
questions,
little
man,
more
yeah.
some beer, we got over
super
here.
lemon funk.
I like Super
Maybe-
Lemon Funk.
Yeah, I like that
Alright, I think
because
I
it is a bigger beer, right? How big is this beer?
Not that big. It's actually less big than the original one.
Is it really?
Well, you guys wanted to add like 11 ounces of hops
To just
to
the
5 gallons of like 6% ABV beer.
but to just the whirlpool. That wasn't
Yeah.
including the dry hop.
So it's a scaled down version of that.
Yeah.
It's a nice beer feeling.
So a drinkable version.
I would definitely drink the original, but it's a summer beer. It's like a nice, it's Funk Sprung, at least
Yeah.
an inspiration.
How many alcohols?
What question are we on now?
How do you keg a beer? You want to find the Super Lemon Haze recipe over there? It's in the stack.
Sure. Oh, sorry.
Do we not have it over here already?
Nah, I don't think so. So we sanitized our tubing. We sanitized our keg.
Tubing.
We're sanitizing our siphon. Let me bring you guys back for the action too. Get you in where you can see. Yeah.
Beer and a
just over
show.
your shoulder. Yeah.
Oh wait, we got another one. If I have only brewed extract kits, what's a good next step to help my brewing addiction?
Brew in a bag.
Yeah, brew in a bag. I agree with that. Completely.
Which we actually just did a live stream class on.
Should we just get down
basically-
here and talk? Like, I think you should do brew in a bag next. Is that did that work?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a nice close up.
But basically, like brew in a bag, it allows you to go all grain
Is this angle good?
without really much
It's
more
a terrible
equipment.
angle.
Well, I'm just to show how you keg a beer.
He's showing how to keg a beer. Okay, well actually this is great. This is great.
So Sam, just keep kegging back and forth. Sure. But yeah, come either watch our live stream or come on in and ask us about like brew in a bag. But basically, it allows you to go all grain without having to go like fully into the whole
You spend a
mash
shit ton of money on equipment.
Yeah.
You got to buy
a bigger pot, maybe a bigger
$10
heat source,
nylon bag.
and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually how we've been doing it lately.
Yeah, we do that.
We've cranked out some amazing beers just with simple brew in a bag.
Getting like 85% efficiency.
Okay, so my keg is sanitized.
Let's do it this way.
This is the beer that we're gonna keg. Instead of going into a secondary, thank you.
Teamwork. Those lids are always a struggle.
There's
this
hops
looks-
in there.
This looks like a funky
Jesus
boy.
H
Damn,
Christ.
look at that
Did
final
you leave
gravity.
that thing in there?
Yeah,
Can we show the camera?
yeah.
So it got a little bit bigger. Than
Here's another question. How do I know if my beer fermented? You see all that crud just like hanging out? That means at one point the Kreuzen or the Krausen was sitting up that high and has since died back down. So if you see that residual scum, that's a really good sign that your beer is very happy.
And scum is the technical word.
Scum.
And
Right.
also makes this beer sound really, really, really appetizing. Ooh, it's nice and pretty.
Yeah, it looks really pretty. So let's let this go here. And then
Just
we'll
give it a minute.
pinch off our tube. And then Ricky will give us some tasting notes on flat and room temperature.
My favorite.
What did we say we're gonna call it?
Super lemon haze. Funk.
Super funk.
Super funk.
It looks really pretty. It looks like Funk Sprung.
Yeah, looks like funk sprung. Smells like funk sprung. It still needs to chill.
Is it boozy?
It just smells like green beer, like that Play-Doh.
It's young.
smell.
Yeah. It's also coming right off those hops.
It's nice. So it's not super sweet, but you can taste the honey malt there, and there is a nice hop presence. It does need to be dry hopped.
Again, I think we're gonna keg hop it too. It's had one.
Not much nose.
Oh, it's very bright though.
Yeah, it is bright.
I get the El Dorado in the nose.
Yep.
Yeah, very clean.
Yeah,
very
it's
crisp.
clean.
Very
It's
nice.
gonna be a good summer beer.
Yeah, it just
Or
needs a dry hop.
spring beer. Tastes like a spring beer.
Beautiful. You guys want to try it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, give it a shot. It's good.
So, how do you keg a beer? Basically, you
So
let
are we
your
done
beer-
answering? Wait, hold on. Are
transfer
we
that-
done
oh.
answering this guy's question?
Which was the question about.
Well, he said thanks,
brew-
guys. So maybe he's happy. I'll ask him.
Are you happy?
Are you happy with the answer that was given?
Brew in a bag, and we can go through that every step of
Also,
the way.
thank you, Beer by the Numbers, for your question. Really appreciate that.
We like your channel, man. We were actually just talking about you earlier today.
We were. In a sexual manner.
More
You wanna
like.
die?
Can I drink it? Yeah. Yeah.
Is this mine?
Yeah. That's yours, actually. I just took a drink of it. Actually, I gotta leave now. So.
That's cool.
We'll be back on Sunday.
Sunday, and we're doing the.
Mexican, the Brewgrass Light Lime.
Yeah.
Maybe we should live stream our brew day.
I think we are. Yeah,
Going to.
we'll live stream. We need to put out a piece of edited content here.
So we're
pretty
gonna
soon,
start
too.
early.
Whatever you want.
Like 10?
10, sure. I'm here at 10.
Let's start before the shop opens.
I'm down.
I probably won't be here at 10.
Yeah, just come on whenever.
You guys can start up the stream.
Whenever you roll
I'll
out
try to
of
get
bed.
here. 10 is difficult. See you.
I'll see you later.
Yeah.
Take it easy, man.
So yeah.
See you, Ricky.
Peace!
While this continues to rack down into our keg, which we'll finish up on here in a second, we're about 2/3 of the way done, maybe half. Do you have hop rhizomes?
Yeah, absolutely we do. Let's see. Let's go to this other view.
We actually just got these in. Tom Ton Hop Farms, just outside Louisville, like about 20 or 30 minutes away. If you'd asked us a few years ago, like, do you guys have hop rhizomes? The answer was yes, but it's basically little clippings that get cut out in Oregon and then flown into Kentucky, you know, via a package in a UPS plane or whatever. And while they were really, really good crops, they were really good crops that were used to growing in Oregon or like Washington, which is a great hop growing country, but is not exactly the same climate that we have here in Kentucky. So we've been pretty kind of like fortunate, but like it's been pretty awesome that the University of Kentucky Agricultural Extension has teamed up with a lot of the like pilot people who are kind of willing to take the little, you know, capital risk of investing in trying to figure out how these things grow in Kentucky. Back pre-Prohibition, Kentucky had a great community or like culture or network of hop farmers who would make the hops just because there wasn't a way to ship them across the country. If you wanted to brew beer according to the traditional German methods here in Louisville, you needed to have a fresh source of hops. After they all got kind of acclimated to the West Coast, it was a little bit tough to get them to grow well here.
I think the humidity, we have
Yeah.
such really high humidity, it can lead to like mold issues
and
sometimes.
mildew.
The other thing is Japanese beetles, which I think love to snack on those things. So
But the plant itself is, you know, a cousin of marijuana, and marijuana that's been grown in Kentucky for generations grows like
Millennia.
weed, grows like a weed here. So if you can get these things established and over a few generations, kind of like thin the herd for the plants that do really well here, these things are born and raised in Kentucky for a long time, and I think it's the Kentucky Hop Growers Alliance is kind of the formal entity now that's really spearheading this. But hops are coming back. And these have come from one of those hop farms just outside of Louisville that has created. We have Cascade and Centennial that we just got in like 48 hours ago.
We potted them up. We put some root powder on there. So we took it. It comes in root chunks, and that's how you.
It's called a rhizome, so it's like a little piece of root that's that long, kind of like planting a bulb, basically.
So you just kind of take that rhizome, or that chunk of the root, and you bury it down. This one already had some sprouts going on there, so we just kind of left those sprouts above the soil, and hopefully those leaves will start to take in some light and start to wake up. But yeah, generally we've got a little sheet here that's going to give you some really good step-by-step instructions.
We have those in the shop.
I'm nearsighted.
Yeah. We'll put that up on Brewgrass.
Yeah, we'll put this up online. We have it in the shop as well, but that gives you really good steps just for a great hop crop. Hop crop.
And then really just treat them like weeds. Like put them in somewhere they're going to get plenty of sunlight. If you can mound the soil a little bit above them to kind of retain some of the moisture, especially first year. Oh my God, this is hop sludge. Like right above the root, that's going to really help them. And then they don't need like 100% full sun, but like the more sun you can give them, the better they tend to do.
Yeah.
And then the main thing is
something to grow up.
Yeah, something to wrap around.
Something to grab onto.
Out here, we just have like a little bamboo pole that ties into a wire that just goes up to the top of our building. And like last summer, those things grew to the roof. They were like 20 feet in the air. If you're here in Louisville, go to the Holy Grail in the middle of summer, and they have like just the most healthy, beautiful looking hop vines that you can imagine growing up. So they're cool little plants, and they attract nice bumblebees and butterflies and all that kind of stuff. And then usually at the end of August, or mid-August, I suppose, around here, it depends a lot on the season, they'll start putting off these little green pine cones.
Cut it.
Thank you. That you pick and then either use immediately if you want to make a wet-topped beer, or then dry out, freeze if you want to save them, or if you're a big hop manufacturer, chop up and pelletize and then package with nitrogen to preserve all the acidity and the flavors.
So that might be another good question, like, what's the difference between whole leaf and pelletized T90 hop pellets?
It's really just a question of packaging. So like the whole leaf are just basically right off the vine and dried. There's not in my opinion, there's not a ton of, from a homebrewer standpoint, there's not a ton of advantages or disadvantages.
The pellets are almost more, I'd say they are more practical to use from a homebrewer standpoint.
Yeah, they're just easier, they don't clog up your equipment as much, and
you know what you're going to get.
Yeah, it's more consistent.
More consistent. Yeah.
And you do get more surface area. I think they do help, especially with like bittering. They do help with utilization. You get more flavor out of them just because they're chopped up and there's more surface area. Some people like to dry hop with whole leaf, and I think that's totally fine, but I usually use pellet hops for dry hopping too.
Yeah. But if you're growing your own, you got your own fresh hop harvest, that's definitely going to be a fun thing to play with.
And some of the best beers I've ever had have been like those fresh hop beers where people will make an IPA but then just use their like straight off the vine Cascades or Centennials or whatever they're growing. They have a ridiculous amount to throw in so they can just super dry hop against the grain, not to suck your all sticks anymore, but they made that, I can't remember the name of it, but it was Daniel Van Dyke's fresh grown hops that he made in his yard. And they harvested them and they made like a fresh hop beer with them into last summer, I guess. It was amazing. It was so good. So, yes, we do have hop rhizomes.
Yeah. Any other questions on that? I should probably check.
Let me finish kegging this beer real quick too. We'll show you the last few steps.
Sure. Let me switch to that camera.
So, you basically just treat your keg like a secondary fermenter. We racked with our siphon down into our secondary carboy, which in this case is a keg. I've got the lid to the keg sitting over here in the sanitizer, so I'll fish that out.
Maybe I'll pan the camera for this.
Lid gets clamped down. Now, we just want to basically apply pressure to set the lid to basically get it to seal. and then also to start forcing carbon dioxide into our beer in order to get it to carbonate over the next few days. I think we're going to try to tap this one on Sunday for our brew day. There's a lot of different ways you can go about, like, they call this forced carbonating, so we're basically forcing carbon dioxide to dissolve into our beer instead of, like, if you were doing it in bottles, you kind of wait for that week at the end to allow your yeast to produce carbonation inside of the bottle. Here, we're just kind of forcing the issue. We're going to force pressure on this with carbon dioxide that is highly pressurized inside of our CO2 tank here, with our regulator controlling how fast or at what force or at what PSI that pressure comes out. You'll hear about the shake method, which is a really good method. You basically hook up your CO2 tank to your keg and then just shake it back and forth to let that gas just get all up in there and start dissolving. I think it's a really, really good method to use, but I have stopped doing that on hoppier beers especially. You know, the whole point of dry hopping is that fermentation is like such an aggressive process that it will drive off and break down a lot of those more delicate aromatic oils and resins and compounds. I take that to heart a little bit when I am forced carbonating a hoppy beer. So instead of shaking it back and forth, what I've been doing lately is actually just putting my gas line on my liquid post, which is the long one that goes down here. That way when I connect it, the gas is just slowly bubbling up through here. I'm not overly agitating the surface.
What PSI is that at?
And then I'll set that to about 30, maybe 35 to 40 PSI. So it'll bubble here just for a few minutes.
I like that sound.
I know, it's a cool sound. It's kind of satisfying.
Yeah.
But basically, what'll happen now, you'll hear this kind of stopping, but liquid absorbs more CO2 when it's cold than it does when it's room temperature. So what we'll do now is throw all this into the fridge, and just now as it chills down to like fridge temperature overnight, more gas will get shot out of that regulator set to 30 psi as more space becomes available and more gas dissolves into our beer. Probably by tomorrow afternoon, just through that process, this will be fully carved and ready to go. It takes a little bit longer than the forced carbonate, than the shaking method, but it's a lot more consistent in terms of your results. And I think it holds on to hop flavors better. We will probably dry hop this one in the keg too, which basically means tomorrow, once it's fully carved, I'll come back, I don't know where it is, we'll find one. But we'll grab our little keg hopping screen. We'll put 2 or 3 ounces of hops in it. Just disconnect the CO2, take the lid off. Some pressure will escape, but the beer will still be cold and carbonated, so it won't become depressurized. We'll drop those dry hops down in there in the thing, let them sit for maybe 2 or 3 more days, and then this beer will be fully done and ready to start drinking on. And hopefully very aromatic and very tasty. But for now, we'll throw it in the fridge and get this thing starting to carb.
So there you go. How to keg a beer. Full demonstration there. Here's another question we've been getting a couple times the past few days. I don't know what it is. There's a big group of people going on a cruise here in town or something.
Yeah, I've had that one like twice this week.
A few times this week. Separate people, different occasions, they come in to ask us to help them sneak booze onto a cruise.
So we're not willing to answer that question. We can't help you. I'm sorry. But, you know, however you want to address it. I think it's totally unethical to do that. I would never ever recommend that anybody ever consider it.
However.
No however.
No
It's
however?
reprehensible.
Oh, okay.
It would be absolutely reprehensible for somebody to like empty out a bottle of wine.
Don't do this.
Yeah, this is horrible. Why? Why would you do this? Why would you just take a bottle of wine off the shelf and empty it out, or, you know, enjoy it with some friends? That sounds, no, don't do that.
That part you can do. You can do that.
You can definitely enjoy a bottle of wine.
You
with
can
friends.
enjoy the bottle of wine part. And then what you absolutely shouldn't do though
Fill it up with tequila.
is take like some nice.
Jose Cuervo.
I mean, do some nice bourbon.
Yeah, take some nice Bullet bourbon.
Get some
or
Bullet.
Buffalo
get some,
Trace.
Get some
Willet.
Get some Old Foe.
Some Old Foe.
Pour it in here.
Don't pour it in there.
Don't do that. And then definitely don't put a cork on it and put a shrink cap over it.
Definitely don't leave like about 1.5 inches of headspace. And then you would just need to not use a wine corker with a very small gauge cork in it to reseal your bottle of sin and shame that now has whatever in God's name you put on it in it. I guess apparently you're allowed to take like 2 bottles of wine on a cruise, but you're not allowed to take any alcohol. I don't know if you've ever been on a cruise before.
I haven't.
Me neither. But this is the question. Like I've been asked 2 times this week.
It's cruise season, I guess.
I guess it's cruise season. We'll see if this is hot enough to activate our shrink cap. But if you want to be really sneaky, which we definitely do not recommend or advise people to do, you would take one of these wine shrink caps, which make a bottle of wine look really nice. Just put it down into a nice heat source. This might need to be a little bit hotter before it fully works.
I think it's going.
And then those just shrink down nice and tight over the top, and you have an unopened bottle of
Wine.
Wine.
that you should not take on a cruise ship. That is unethical. People, don't do that.
You need to pay at least $8 per
You need
drink.
to pay, you need to be paying whatever the cruise ship is offering you. They're not trying to like invite you guys to sneak booze onto a cruise ship. That is, I actually think it's awesome. It's the American way.
That's impressive.
You want to do 1 or 2 more?
Yeah. I don't think we need to go for hours and hours, but we can answer a few more questions here.
What's the difference between a lager and an ale? You kind of answered that.
We kind of talked about that a little bit.
What's the easiest type of beer to brew for my first batch? That's a question that I get asked a lot for sure.
Yeah.
There's really no right or wrong answer to that, I don't think.
Back it up.
We can make a pretty like accessible recipe for any style. Like I guess what I would say is for your first batch, you're
What
gonna
do you
end
like
up
to
with
drink?
5 gallons. Yeah. What would you walk into a liquor barn and like leave with 2 cases of? What's your favorite like go-to style of beer? I don't know if you have one that's like everyday drinking.
For me,
Yeah.
just any hoppy IPA.
Me too. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
And I know most people out there are hop heads these days. So like something like just a nice IPA. It's really so the easiest beers to make are the ones that have like those big flavors. The hardest beer in the world to make is like a light pilsner.
A lager.
The hardest beer in the world to make is Bud Light or like something like that. Because there's nothing to hide behind. These are all about precision, and these are all about minimizing flavors and variables. It's all about minimalization in this, which is hard to do. But if you're trying to maximize flavors, if you like those big, robust stouts or porters or brown ales or like malty red ales, or on the other end of the spectrum, if you love hops, if you love pale ales and American IPAs and double IPAs and all that kind of stuff, you can make a great IPA, you can make a great stout almost without fail. Like it's kind of hard to mess one of those beers up, I would say, just because there's so much going on.
I would say, yeah, basically whatever you like to drink. You know, if you want to do an IPA, a pale ale, a porter, a stout, an amber ale, a brown ale, a Kolsch, or
Kolsch is a good one too.
any of those are going to be fairly the same process. So none of those are really going to be too much harder than the other.
That's the nice thing about it too. Is like whether or not you want to make a Kolsch or whether or not you want to make an imperial, like a Russian imperial stout like we have over here. Yeah, it's all, the ingredients will vary. The way that we kind of help you put together the grains and the hops and the yeast, the recipe will always be a little bit different, but how you mix that stuff together, the brewing process will always be exactly the same. So it's really not any harder to make a light beer versus a dark beer versus a hoppy beer. It's really just about making something that you're going to enjoy and get excited about and want to come back and hopefully make another one.
Kind of just how we were talking about the lagering process before. That's where it gets a little more complicated. Just because you do need to have like a fermentation chamber, somewhere it's going to keep it at a steady lower temperature.
Yeah, temperature control. Kind of
Temperature
back to
control.
Isaac's question earlier, like controlling the temperature of their yeast, especially in those beers where you don't want to pick it up, where it's just supposed to taste like super clean and super neutral. Yeah, that's where that becomes more important. But anything like stouts or IPAs, you can get away with a lot, and the beer's going to come out really, really good. Or Belgian beers is another really good example, because actually you can, in a lot of Belgian beers, intentionally stress out your yeast to kind of drive that wild, fruity, kind of funky Belgian taste that you get out of a lot of those. But my number one answer would be like, what you want to case your
Yeah.
favorite beer, because
Yeah.
we can make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question. So I do extract brewing pretty exclusively, and I now have an 8-gallon boil pot.
Mhm.
Some of the recipes, when I'm reading the instructions, they still say to boil 3.5 gallons of water, and then add purposely another
Yeah,
2
you do not
gallons or
have to do
so. I know I don't have to, but is there any impact to the recipe, the outcome, by doing boiling only? So Sam, you just put together a couple recipes
Yeah.
for me. Heavy on dry extract.
Mhm.
What do I have? 6 pounds?
Yeah, 9 pounds in one.
9 pounds in one. So
8
if I
here.
were to just boil that in 3.5 gallons
Yeah.
versus starting off with 6.5 or 7.
If you have the capacity.
Yeah. But what would the impact be, the difference in the recipe, the outcome, if I did one each way? Same recipe, but boiling
Yeah.
3.5 versus boiling 6.5.
So number one, the more water that you have, like the more flavor and sugar, the more you're going to be able to dissolve the good flavors out of the grain, just because there's like, you're not going to over saturate the like liquid or whatever. And I'd say like also, once you're boiling, if you're boiling like 6 gallons as opposed to 3, it's the same amount of sugar because you're making the same alcohol beer, so it's more diluted in 6 gallons, so it's not going to caramelize. You're not going to like risk the chance of like force caramelizing some of those sugars. So if you're trying to do really clean beers, if you're making a big malty beer like a stout, I don't think it makes a lick of difference. But if you are trying to do something cleaner, like a Belgian triple, or like even like a lighter end of the spectrum barley wine or something like that, or a double IPA, having more water I think can help, because it's less.
There's more solution for everything.
I mean,
that
I
dissolves
get
into
that.
it.
not as
I'm always going to boil 6.5 gallons because I have the capacity to do it.
Yeah.
I was just curious if there was any difference in what the beer would end up being.
I would say
for
it'll be
somebody
lighter
that's-
bodied. It won't taste quite as caramelized. Like you won't have as much of like the toffee flavor that you might get out. Some people talk about like the extract flavor in beers. Sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, I can tell it's extract." To me, what that usually means is you can tell it was a small boil volume and there was forced caramelization. So to me, that's the biggest difference of doing like, extract on 6 gallons and boiling down to 5,
All right.
versus doing extract on 3 gallons and then topping up to 5.
So is there ever a reason you'd want to boil less water for more caramelization?
You'll hear about a
different
style
flavor?
of brewing called like decoction mashing. So sometimes if you're trying to make a beer that's really malty, and if you want to like be able to ferment it out super dry, but still have like a nice residual malt flavor, that's when you do like kind of intentionally want to scorch or like force caramelize stuff. So if you're doing like a Doppelbock, or like a Belgian dark strong, then you might, that actually might be to benefit the style. Although there are certainly ways to accomplish that same thing, like using Belgian candy sugar or something like that.
Okay.
But generally speaking, if I was just going to give like a broad rule, I think your beer is always going to be better if you can achieve a full boil. Even if you're like, I think extract beers win the state fair and competitions all over the country, but it's usually somebody who has like a propane burner and is just using extract for gravity, boiling at full boil, adding all the hops into that. Hop utilization is a lot better too. If you have like a lot more liquid for those hops to swim around in, there's just more liquid for them to isomerize in, basically.
Right.
There are going to be small differences. It'll stir color out really well if you only have a pot this size.
Yeah,
It's
and
still
it's
gonna be
definitely
really good.
minimal. So I wouldn't. It's not gonna like make or break a beer, but especially when you're getting more like into those really styled, like, specific niches where you want a really specific flavor, that's where I think a full boil definitely wins. Yeah.
Okay. Now that just made me think of another question. If you guys are still
No, these
we're
are
just
great
kinda hanging
questions,
out.
actually.
Yeah.
all right. So a couple times when I was getting my water volume up, and I decided, okay, I'm gonna like sparge my steeping grains a little bit. I'm like, I'm probably leaving some flavor in there, so I ran just a little bit of hot water over in there. Anyway, by the time I added all my extract and all that, I had like 7.5 gallons, and I'm like, that's gonna be too much.
Yeah.
So I let it boil off a little bit before I started my hop.
I do that all the time.
additions. All
Yep.
right. And then one of the recipes that I just gathered here today, they say do a 75-minute boil, but they're not starting the hop additions till 60. So why would they ask?
What kind of beer was it?
It's a 200 ale clone, and it's straight from Bell's store.
I would say, like,
So they
again,
want you to
we kind
boil
of-
15 minutes before, and this might have been the 3.5 gallon boil even for that matter. But, so, is there
Yeah,
any?
my gut answer would just be that you are trying to concentrate that sugar a little bit.
Okay.
Like you're kind of not necessarily forcing caramelization in that kind of a scenario, but you are trying to just concentrate to get a little bit more of that malt flavor to kind of come forward. Although I don't think there's like a ton of
Yeah.
utility to that. We're just doing a
Both
60-minute
these.
boil.
So I had the 200 ale clone and the Oberon clone,
Yeah.
and each of those only have 8 ounces of steeping grains. That'll be the smallest amount of steeping grains I've ever used. So it's kind
How
of
much? Like 8 ounces, you said?
yeah.
For the Bell's 200 too?
Mm-hmm. Again, this is right.
Let
from
us know how that
Bell's.
one turns out. I think we can do it better. Bell's
Well, I
200
did
recipe.
a different 200 clone last summer that you guys put together for me. It's great.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
let us
thought,
know how this
I'll
how it
try
compares.
this one
Yeah,
just
yeah.
for the fun of it.
For sure.
No, thanks for the answers.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's fun to do. Like sometimes it's. I can only speak to doing it like 30 gallons at a time. When you're doing it like 3,000 gallons at a time,
Yeah.
I bet there are reasons that make sense for them to do it like that. Like
Yeah.
getting just more sugar out of that much grain probably means you need to use like 10% less grain or something like that, which probably comes through on the bottom line significantly. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have a great answer to that question. But on a homebrew scale, I don't think it makes a ton of difference.
I think what I'm finding, and I'm only into my second year, I've done 12 or 13 batches so far. I don't know that you can really screw it up unless you just get really stupid.
Yeah, exactly right. It's
So-
funny too, like how quickly you'll hear
Yeah.
people say, like, "Man, the stuff I'm making is better than the stuff I can buy at the store."
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing.
I
in the
have
world.
not purchased too much beer for home the
Yeah.
last year.
Mostly we do it for like R&D. You know, if there's something
That's
new out on the
exactly
market,
right. I
we
just
want
bought
to
a
try
six-pack,
it,
and, a mixed six-pack
Yep.
from Kroger last week just to try something.
see what
different.
people are doing,
Yeah.
stay on top of the trends, and like all
Tax
that
deduct
stuff.
that shit.
Yeah, tax deductible.
Well, you guys can.
Hey man, brewery and planning.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much. If you have questions, if you're coming in after the fact, just leave them down in the comments and we'll get back to you, or send us an email, boymeetswort@gmail.com or brewgrasshomebrew@gmail.com, or call us, or come into the shop is probably our favorite thing you could possibly do. But thanks for hanging out, and I think we'll see you guys on Sunday.
Yeah, we'll see you guys. We're gonna do a brew day on Sunday.
Brewgrass Light Lime.
Not Bud Light Lime.
Not Bud Light.
Much better.
Brewgrass Light Lime. Copyright. Thanks, guys.
Peace. See you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, man.